Thank you everyone for coming. I know there are not very much of choice that I've given all of you. As I've already indicated, it is kind of extrinsically motivated for many of you to attend today's talk, but there it is. Why I make this reference to extrinsic motivation is because when I met Yuvan about 11.5 years back, when I was teaching in a Krishnamurti Foundation school near Chennai, named Pathashala, where Yuvan came as a 16-year-old boy. And one thing that I observed in this person is that he had a lot of energy and a lot of zeal for natural world, but also he had this keenness and the ability to learn without being extrinsically motivated. And precisely why I say so, that he has decided to move out of the traditional education system, but the kind of knowledge that he holds on various natural phenomena, not only natural phenomena, but also the interaction between society, nature, economy is incredible. And I'm sure that you will be able to see some of it in his talk, and some of you have attended the workshop that he conducted earlier today. But I'm sure that in this whatever 1.5 hours time will not be enough to do justice for the amount of energy and eagerness to learn that this person brings onto the table. Now I see him about 11.5 years later, 27 years old man, running a trust on his own. Mostly the trust is created like organizations created by the students or the colleges where he has conducted workshops, and the student wanted to kind of come together and work for a greater cause, which obviously he is going to discuss. I'm not going to say more than a few lines, which many of you might have found on his Google bio. But Yuvan is a writer, naturalist, educator, environmental defender based in Chennai. His interests include reimagining an earth-centric and child-centric education, the reciprocity between languages and ecologies, and ground-up processes of change and politics. He writes on topics at the intersection of ecology, education, and human, more than human consciousness. And he is the author of 4 books, recipient of M. Krishnan Memorial Nature Writing Award, the Sanctuary Asia Green Teacher Award, among others. He loves working with children and concerned for a number of alternative educational institutions across India. He is the founder trustee of Pallavood Trust for Nature Education and Research. Just before I hand it over to him, there are 2 students in Krea at this moment who has studied in Pathashala. The job is for you to figure out. But do ask them what is Yuvan Anna in Pathashala. He was indeed a phenomena when all the students were there, because he could handle snake, he could tell names of butterflies and insects just out of his out of that. So he was a phenomena, and here it is. I hand it over to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. That introduction removes my nervousness, because I'm mildly nervous coming into academic settings. I'm highly unqualified to do whatever I'm doing in life, but yeah, words like that put a little bit of confidence in me. So just to kind of very concisely summarize what I do or what we do with different people I work with, organizations I work with, we try to include in our learning process connection and stewardship with place, other people, other species. That's one part of the work. The other part of the work is we create hell for industries and other entities trying to screw up our remaining wild places. Yeah. So that's very shortly what I do. Now, in this talk, I just want to tell you some stories of work which I've been doing on the coast. I was invited by Rahul here, who's done some phenomenal work on dolphins and human conflict. So I have 3 stories from the coast, and things I've experimented, reimagined with educational philosophy. Hopefully that might interest some of you. Let's see. And some bunch of other things. Maybe after that we will open up to questions. I hope it makes it worthwhile. That but this has been made compulsory. That's unfortunate, but yeah, let's see if I can make it worthwhile. Okay. First story. Hey, how many of you have been to the toxic pool? Okay, very good. And did you go into Katapalli Island? Katapalli Island? No. Okay. So since about, let's say, 2018, 2019, we've been working on the Pulicat issue. Yeah, now you find that North Chennai is where the British called the Black Town, and this side was called Georgetown, sometimes even called White Town. And it was the Kuam River would mark the junction of a discriminatory development paradigm. Yeah, you built your dirty industries, your red category industries on the north of the Kuam, not because it was a suitable site. It's a highly unsuitable, very watery landscape, because the people there were, politically weaker, financially weaker, and you could kind of take advantage. Versus if you build a thermal power station in Besanagar, they put you out of business. Yeah, because all the rich dudes live there. So you build. So we have about 37 red category industries. So if you study a law called Hazardous Waste Act, a red category industry is something which pumps out lethal stuff. Yeah, you don't want to be living anywhere around it or near the water or the air. So this port you see here is the proposed Adani port. Yeah, it's about 6,111 acres proposed on the Katupalli Island. Yeah, and hey, how many of you from Chennai? How many of you from Chennai? Oh, that's a good crowd. Feeling better. No, okay. Yeah. Now, if Chennai exists, okay, let me ask this question. Why does Chennai exist where it exists? Like, why is Chennai located where it is located? No. Coastline, okay. And why there? Oh, very good. That's exactly the answer I was looking for. What is the largest river in Chennai? Yeah, that's good. Hey, you're not allowed to answer. With PhDs on these topics and coming and answering questions. Now, so a city comes around hydrologies. Any city you look for, yeah, hydrologies nourish cities bottom up, and then there comes a time when the socio-ecological memory of that bedrock is erased, and then we screw ourselves up. So this is one such big example. Kosastalaya flows, its basin is 4 times greater than Kuam and Adyar put together. So as such, Chennai exists because of Kosastalaya. And the industrialization of that landscape speaks of this erasure of memory. Yeah. If Kosastalaya goes into North Chennai, flares into Yennur Creek, it's not enough to hold all its water, goes in back again, flares into a place called Karungali next to Pulicat, says, oh, not enough space for all the water to go out. It returns back again, goes into Pulicat and empties itself. Pulicat is pretty nearby here. So this fort is put on an island, what is called a sand barrier island. Yeah, and sand barrier islands are built over centuries by river bringing in sediment. So if you go into those Google pointer things, if you go into Google Earth Pro and sort of pull the time slider, you find that the sand barrier island is snaking around. It's not a stable thing. It's almost alive, little temporarily spaced out. Yeah. And why that is important is that the Pulicat complex, the Kosastalaya, these sand barrier islands are on the northeast of Chennai. And so first thing which cyclones meet are the sand barrier islands, the mangroves, the sand dunes, and then they come into Chennai. So their velocity, ferocity is reduced significantly before they come in, and yet we're all kind of hanging to our homes when a cyclone hits us. Yeah. So this port structure you know, threatens that significantly. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about what's happening here. Yeah. So people who went on the toxic tour would have known this, that beaches are in fact slow sand rivers. I take a lot of people on shore walks along beaches. I joke, it's not a joke, it's true, but if you sit on the beach and meditate, and then you get up 4 days later, you will have moved north if you are on the east coast of India. If I say, hey, who carried me over? No. So sand is slowly moving. What happens if you block the path of sand is that there is accretion on one side to the south, and there's erosion on the north. Yeah. So Marina Beach is an artificial beach. How do you know artificial beach? Is that the porosity of the beach is very, very low. If it rains, it becomes a lake. You've seen that in Marina Beach? Yeah. So, yeah. And on the other side, if you've gone to Ennur, the people who went there, you find that the beach is eroding. Anywhere between 8 to 40 meters in a year. Problems when beach erode is that, why do we need beaches? Everybody, what? Like, very selfishly, why do we need beaches? Not for popcorn and cotton candy, like little more. Yeah. Yes.
I believe beach sand is how you make glass, cement.
Okay. Why do you need beaches in a situation where you're not actually extracting the sand? Yes. Fishing, okay. Fisher communities put their boats there, mend their nets, all of that. Climate buffers, storm buffers, yeah. Protect us from tidal surges, yeah.
Recreational, just to enjoy the view.
Yeah, just to chill out. That's very important. That's a big one. One of the most important things about beaches, especially in a coastal area, is that beaches store water and create these bioshields from sea intrusion. Yeah, interesting paper Anna University released in 2019 in Ennur, where there's no beach. Seawater keeps traveling in like it's a tourist, 12 kilometers inside. Yeah, so there's no groundwater anywhere in that place from beach to 12 kilometers. So if Besanagar beach vanished, imagine 12 kilometers from there. Not having, or any other beach, I don't know which beach is here nearby. Yeah. So this structure, which is also planned to be built on the Kosastalaya River, which is our greatest, which is the point that on the Kosastalaya River, which is our greatest flood catchment area, will completely keep the water to this side. And when such a big thing is built here, it is India's largest port. Yeah. 3,000 acres of it will be on sea. And the rest of it all here. This side, a sand barrier island protects the Pulicat Lagoon, yeah, which is already kind of shaking. That will erode, and the Bay of Bengal will merge with Pulicat. Yeah, so all that protection. About 55,000, fisher people on the Tamil Nadu side itself dependent on Pulicat. Our whatever rocket launch side, not that it's a big deal. Maybe for some it is, but yeah. Those are the kind of major issues this faces. Thank God for the Hindenburg report. Yeah, but you see, there is certain kind of science which is practiced in large universities, which is also important, and there's a certain kind of science which is practiced by all of us together, put in a place where all of us can access it, and is useful for all of us. Yeah, and this sort of a thing is there. So Adani said, or rather his company said, all this place is barren land. An exercise we did is we went and asked the fisher folk, what all do you use this place for? So the ocean is blue barren land for anybody who does not know. But there are specific areas in the ocean. Tamil fisher folk classify the ocean into 3 habitats: Tara, Para, Sere. Yeah, Tara is sandy habitat. You get your guitar fish, soul fish, things like that there. Sere is places where slush comes, organic sediment is deposited over time. Prawn and crab, especially economically important species, come there. Then Para is either rock or reef, you get a whole lot of different stuff there. So we mapped all the ocean use there. Yeah, find there's a whole bunch of places. And then here we mapped how they use it. So it's not flamingo, flamingo forensic areas. And we mapped how they use the inland areas, just to refute the fact that this is not barren land. One of the things I love telling in talks like this, barrenness is a state of mind, never a state of land. Yeah. So a few examples of how we went ahead of this campaign, which we have, thanks to Hindenburg, we might win, I don't know. But we were able to put significant spokes in the wheel of the richest people in the world. Yeah. I took my class 11 students, so we used to be doing a class campaign. All of us get together and say, okay, something you pick up and make a difference. Yeah. And so we said, okay, Pulicat is going on, let's do something. So what these children did was, bunch of them made art. Another bunch of them said, okay, let's go talk about this in about 40, 50 schools. Some of them, they did not physically go talk. They spoke to their friends, got signatures, and then we held a press conference on that. And then there were children holding these pieces of art, and everything. The media walked in, kind of zapped. Children want to protect the lagoon and stuff. And 2 days later, there was a public hearing for the board. And media coverage was so big for this that the public hearing was cancelled. So that kind of screws them up a bit. Here, what we did was we went and looked at places where the port would be expanded and saw the birds nesting. Very kind of very godsend way. That specific year, pelicans started nesting on the pylon towers. We took pictures and we said, hey, you can't build a port here, man. Get lost. Okay. We wrote in a bunch of other places. Yeah. These are things, difference-making, change-making practices which did not require, big, influence or political power, just will and intention, passion coming together. Yeah. That's story number one. Story number two. Yeah. This is from a place called Odiur Lagoon. Anybody's been to Odiur Lagoon? No. Odiur Lagoon is slightly about 40-50 kilometers south of Chennai. Huge, expanse of coastal wetland. Tens of thousands of birds come there. And the highway wanted to expand into it. Yeah, so you have. So you find that there's actually water there, and then they put rocks there. And one of my advocate friends were passing that, and they said, hey, what the hell, man, there's water standing there, you're putting rocks there, can you see that it's a water body? So he took pictures, we filed a case in the court, yeah. And very simple thing we did, we went and did bird surveys, yeah. And look at the number of birds sitting here, yeah. And we produced a document to the court, yeah. And we displayed those pictures of birds in the court, and the judge saw with mouth open, like that. And he was like, no way you're building there. But then there was a lot of other things which, how many of you are an eBird contributive other than Shivani here? Hey, come on, you need to be an eBird. Okay. Okay. So eBird is another citizen science portal where anybody, you and I, your younger cousin who's 4 years old, anybody, you see birds somewhere, you can make a list, put it on eBird. Yeah, you can take pictures, also put it on eBird. Yeah, it becomes data. If you put something, if you saw ostrich in Krea, how do you make sure that does not become scientific data? eBird reviewer will write to you saying, thank you for using eBird. I think your observation seems a bit preposterous. Can you please submit evidence for that? Yeah. So it is actually scientific data. People are there reviewing your data, and this we used in court. And as such, the data generated here is not from big universities. Anybody who crossed that path, got down for 10 minutes, Vijayan, this, that, wobbler, put on eBird, go about your business. Yeah. And that can save a place. That can save a place. Yeah. That's the court order which we got, which we said we direct the National Highway not to carry on any work on the western side existing. So the court said, get lost, man, go build your road somewhere else. Yeah. That was a recent victory. This was last month. Yeah. My very last story before I kind of jump on something else. Yeah. This is Kaliveli. Kaliveli is 100 kilometers. Alamparai Fort. Anybody has been to Alamparai Fort? I'm sure the Patshala folks have been to Alamparai. No? They're glaring at me. Never mind. Okay. Okay. So this is a place about 100 kilometers south of Chennai. Again, it's a coastal area. Hundreds of species of birds found there. And here 2 harbors are coming up. And luckily for us, what happened was that without getting any what is called a coastal zone clearance, so there's a law which says, you have to use different parts of the coast in different ways based on how they're classified. So there's highest protection. If somewhere turtle is coming, or seagrass is there, or coral reef is there, it's called CRZ 1A, which means you can't touch it. And then there is CRZ 1B, which is intertidal, and 2 and 3 and so on. Yeah. Problem with this place is that usually these maps are made by these ocean scientists who are supposed to look at if turtle is coming, seagrass is coming, and then mark it. They don't do that. They sit in their office and color the map like a child does a coloring book. Yeah, I like green. Yeah, I like pink. And so they've mapped it all wrong. So this battle is because they marked the entire place as nothing. But there's turtle, there's bird, there's everything. Yeah. So we got to pick this up and fight. Issue here is there are 2 rich villages, Alagan Kukuman. In the Pulicat case, we and the indigenous people were friends. We are working with the fisher community. Here, there are 2 fisher communities who want the harbor. They are operating at Kasimedu, Pondicherry, big harbors, and they want the harbor. And then there's an interesting inequality within inequality you see in some coastal landscapes. If you go out into sea or upper caste, if you are dependent in the inland wetland, maybe you're collecting crabs and prawns, maybe you're collecting oysters, lugworms, maybe you're harvesting a certain type of grass, there you're lower caste. The whole bunch of about 60 villages dependent in the inland wetland will not speak up because they'll get lynched by the rich villages. And that sort of uglily plays out in some of these places. Yeah. So we took that. And again, I want to point out specifically how citizen science helped us among many other things. This is the EIA. EIA means environmental impact assessment. A proper definition of a EIA is a bunch of lies the project proponent tells to get his project done. Yeah. So you can see how many species of birds is documented there. Somebody read out.
49.
49. Yeah. eBird data. Yeah. So we were able to use a whole bunch of citizen science to show that guy is lying. Yeah. And this is not a victory yet. It's now reserved for judgment, but it was able to strengthen our hand. Yeah. And to underline the fact that everybody was involved in this. How that might work in a place like Krea, I don't know, there are maybe grasslands out there where you guys once a week went out, documented the birds, put it on eBird, documented other life, put it on iNaturalist, do that for 1 year, or maybe there's a water body nearby, and later when it is threatened, that can save that place and also save you in that sense. There's this New Zealandian saying, which sometimes I write down for myself to kind of affirm, say, I am not fighting for the river. I am the river fighting itself. So there is that sense of expanded selfhood, which this sort of a practice allows for. Wait a minute. Okay, let me come. Let's stop on this. I am interested as an educator to understand what kind of experiences I can create for the learner. Sometimes I'm also the learner. Sorry, that's a very partial. Okay. To make sure the place is part of your identity. Other people, other species, your selfhood, your identity is vast, not shrunk. Yeah. There's a beautiful story of the Sami people in Norway who, what happened, a dam was being built on the river, and then they started breaking down the dam physically. And then they were arrested, produced in court. And even though the judge spoke the same language, he wouldn't understand what they were saying because they were accusing the people building the dam that they were actually clotting them. They were, harming them. In their folklore, the river is an extension, almost physical, spiritual extension of themselves. And the judge was like, no, man, they were not harming you, they're harming the river. That guy didn't understand. Yeah. But I think that is a lived reality. I think a lot of us can experience kinship in a very vast way, depending on the cultural some of culture can be reimagined, some of culture can be created new for us. What is my source of identity and meaning? What am I kin with? How shrunk or vast can that be? So, I work with government with respect to creating climate curriculum. Yeah. And I use the word climate because then I'm inside. When you say climate, I'm like, oh, come. There's a lot of funds there and stuff. But then, problem with that is that it doesn't look at a bunch of other things. Yeah. So there are 9 planetary boundaries. So in our curriculum, we look at all the planetary boundaries, not just climate. But then we say climate at the beginning so that I'm bought first. Yeah. And I want to propose that climate change is a cultural issue. It's not a technological fix. You can read, for instance, Eugene Cordero, amazing scientist, looks at good educational interventions, how much of a structural change that can create. And he kind of scales it up in his own way to, it's better than a techno-fix, a wind or a solar. One of my mentors, Nityanand Jayaraman, the person who's deeply inspired my activist vision, he says that if you're going to do the same thing with solar, you screw up the planet with fossil fuel only. Don't jump to something else and create a new crisis. Yeah. So a culture means what are my values? What drives my work and practice and life? What are my worldviews and beliefs? Yeah. That stems, I think Sonjitana has written about social drivers of consumerism. Bunch of stuff we do because it's kind of socially driven, not that I need it. So I want to propose that that's the issue. Yeah. And from there, I want to think what kind of experiences I can create so people stand up for their place, our stewards. Yeah. Can somebody make sense of this table? It's a very nice paper, sample size 2,000 people by Nancy Wells and Christy Leckis. I kind of discovered the reality of this before actually coming up on this. Because I share my own experience, it's like solo just guessing. I show complicated figures like this, people like, oh, okay. And anybody, what is this summarizing? Yes, sir.
It's like regression.
Regression results. Okay, can you tell it like a story?
Yeah. We're looking at a variable, say wild nature. One unit change in wild nature, have a corresponding change in our environmental behavior.
Got it. And what does that say with respect to different variables here?
How much of an impact that particular variable has on environment?
Okay, so the kind of, sorry, the answer, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
Some child or person is exposed to wild nature a lot, their direct and indirect association with that something to make a connection with it, and so they're told.
Okay, that's what. So this is 2,000 people, and there's a control group who ends up taking up either volunteering or actual livelihoods or a bunch of other things which they engage in conservation action. Yeah. Could be a nature educator, could be an activist, it could be somebody who just donates every day to this stuff. Yeah, or a bunch of people. Very interesting. If you have direct experiences, there is some sort of a correlation. If you have environmental education alone, if you sit in your classrooms and read your books, there is zero correlation. But it's a very nice study. I might pass it on. Yeah. So, bunch of things here. Wait, let me let's go back. I'll tell you a few things I've been doing to kind of break this. How do I include direct engagement? If the research, this is what the research is saying. Yeah. This is an internship I run called Youth Climate Internship. Not I run, a bunch of us from Palluir Trust. Yeah. And it is to train youth from climate vulnerable communities. So we have from Kakkan Colony, Urukupam, and Ramapuram. So this youth from the fisher community, Dalit communities, and domestic labor communities. Can we give them the experiences, train them to become powerful nature educators and facilitators of personal, social, ecological justice? That's the dream of the program. A couple of them are joining us as nature educators and be able to pay them, thankfully. That interest is there. Yeah, that is this. Here, this is an apprenticeship program we ran. I spoke about it in the previous workshop where we played the game. Yeah, that session was more fun than this. That some of you missed it. So this is a program where we work with the fisher community and we asked, and these were what they called COVID children because they went through 2 years of COVID and they could not simply read or write, or they were just pushed through the classes. And we got them and we had to do something. And we were going about saying, you know, nature-based learning was great and all of that. We made their home beach as the emplaced learning context, rich living learning context, as we call it. Yeah. And the tides, the currents, the traditional knowledge, the species of fish which come, other kinds of biodiversity, all of it entirely aligned curricularly with some of the things they had to learn in language, science, and so on. Yeah. And it worked so well. We got letters from 2 of their schools saying, what did you guys do? Come and do it in our schools. You know, children are suddenly speaking English and all of that. What we found was that connection, yeah, and local relevance builds an intrinsic motivation to learn, an inner drive to learn. Versus you ask the child, hey, push motivation, go learn this, go learn that. Versus you place it in their native landscape, they will do what it takes to learn. That was our finding. That was the inklings of that I first had in the school called Pathshala, where I would go on these long walks. I was 16, 17 years old. And first I watched, you know, snakes, butterflies, trees, and everything. The local children would be like, who's this weird guy, you know, walking the village? And then after some of them would come along with me, they got interested. I went to the school in a village called Vallipuram. And I said, hey, would you be interested, you know, if I could take your children on walks? And so I said, no, we don't have the time. And then I went back, you know, spoke to some of my senior colleagues how to package this. And I said, went back to the school and said, you know what, biodiversity-based program, curricularly aligned, you know, academic inputs, this, that. They said, please come, let's do this. And we saw that there too. For the first time, I said, oh, I'm completely doing biodiversity, but then children are writing better. Children want to learn. Children are, you know, linking it up with other things. The thinking skills are getting better. And it has something to do with their local landscape, yeah, which is their arena of action. For that, we are training teachers from the local community how to use the home beach as a learning space. One more citizen science initiative. How many of you are iNaturalists? iNaturalists. Oh, that's good. You too. So we started this about 4 or 5 years ago, Biodiversity of Chennai. At the time, there were about 4 of us. The dream was that, you know, it's very difficult to love a thing you cannot name. Yeah, a name, neuroscientifically speaking, is like a thumbtack in your, you know, cortex, which lets you actively remember, imagine, think in terms of it. I've done this, of course. I'm no scientist, yeah, but where in communities where people know 50 species of trees, if they can just identify them, the protection trees have is much greater versus they don't know, okay, this is tree, this is big tree, this is small tree. Yeah, they have very less protection. Yeah. So the dream here was anybody can go and search on iNaturalist. If you guys are interested at the end, I could just show you how to use it. Just as an identification tool. But we use it for advocacy. You know, there was a link road coming over the Broken Bridge area in Besanagar, Chennai, and 4 villages were to be evicted. And one of the things the Greater Chennai Corporation said was nothing is found here. And of course, turtles were there. For that, we had a separate data. But the data which was put on this, we used and said so many species are there. And this was all documented by anybody and everybody going there. That's one thing. Second thing is it has brought so many more people into documentation. Yeah. So you look at the iNat map. I mean, this doesn't show, but if you go and look at the India map, you'll find that there are places where there are hot spots. There's tremendous engagement. Chennai would be one of them. Yeah. So a little bit about Palluri Trust. Yeah, I have a bunch of material which I've given to your environmental group club. Okay. And in fact, in that is the book called Seashells, where the entire curriculum we've used for the fisher children in order to how to emplace your learning landscape on the beach itself is there in a book which you can buy. I've given, of course, and you can translate that to any kind of landscape. Yeah, the idea there is something called rhizomatic learning, which means your community, your context, your local landscape is the curriculum, is the bedrock, and from there all your various things emerge. I run another internship for 3 colleges: Stella, WCC, and right now it's Queen Mary's. It's called Urban Wilderness Walks. The idea is to train as a nature educator in the socio-political, ecological landscape of Chennai, and also learn how to use these tools, how to mobilize public, and so on. So I did this for a year, and then 5 girls from a batch of 25 came and said, "Oh my God, this is all I want to do. Can you tell us what to do?" I said, "I don't know what to do. Go do what you want." Okay. And then they kept coming back. And I'm like, okay, I think, I do all of this stuff. And then I kind of let it go and I kind of move on to the next thing, sort of thing. And I said, okay, we need like an organization perhaps to support nature educators and their practice in Chennai. So the energy of these students who were so passionate gave me the momentum to create Palluri Trust, and now we are about 16 of us doing this work. I'll tell you a little bit more about our bunch of stuff we've created. The idea is everything we create creates emotional and physical connections with the local landscape. And we believe that doing and feeling is far more important than knowing, or in fact is more fundamental than knowing. Rachel Carson put this beautifully. It is not half as important to know as to feel. She said that in Sense of Wonder, beautiful book. And this has been my big learning as an educator. I can share some research that's what people believe in, but awareness is a big bad word. People are trained for awareness, or this is bad, this is good. They don't do anything about it. There's a big chasm from awareness to action. So people go out and say, I'm spreading awareness. Very little it can do. Versus the actual practice of action from a young age, in your sensitive periods and so on, builds a culture of action and active citizenship. And I've been thinking deeply into what sort of practices and pedagogies creates that active citizenry. I'll share with you some. That's the slide which will have the most text on it. So I've put in here stuff I reflected on, and also what I've taken from people like Louis Chawla or Zenzelski, whose life work is asking this question. There are some people who turned out as people who stand up for and fight for justice, or share them, or connect much deeply to other things. And there are other people who are, not because of their own reasons, go into other things or don't happen to do that. Okay, this is not a judgy question. Okay, so how many of you definitely won't do EVS as your major? Definitely won't. Thanks for being honest. Yeah, and
is there anyone who is doing?
So people who would do, perhaps considering. Okay, can few of you share why? I had a very interesting conversation with Ashwin, the gentleman I met in the morning. Dijashwin, okay. And he was talking about his volunteering opportunities he got, which changed his mind. And we're coming back to direct engagement. Few days I've been to a single field trip to Oroville, working with plants and native vegetation. Completely changed my mind. Versus reading all day about them in I don't know whatever books. Yeah. So if few of you could share what's pushing you to make that decision. 2, 3, 4 of you. Tell me when it's time.
Yeah. There's that. Who wants to go?
So for me, it was my childhood and the connect I had with animals. So we had pet cows at home. So it started there, and also I think folk stories with a lot of animals in them. And yeah, from there my love for animals started, and then it slowly expanded to biodiversity and slowly to the environment itself.
Sarah is behind.
Yeah. So the very first thing is that I believe in giving practical knowledge instead of sitting in the classroom and doing something which you want to pay attention to. But I think so. Looking at the emerging issues right now, climate change is one of the things that everyone is focusing on, and thinking about those things or learning about those things which is actually implement, right? Rather than studying about some concepts which will never be implemented, like economic theories or something or whatever. So also the animal life, like I really love animals. So also like yesterday's talk about wildlife, the change to my mind, and I think that I might consider doing environmental economics rather than just economics, because just economics maybe not help everything, and environmental economics can really help everything.
Could you reflect on what could have created that belief? So you said you believe that there needs to be practical engagement. Or
Yeah. So for example, Adam Smith's theory of what studying history of economics, you're just studying history. It's not going to help you in the future.
but there are others who made and also I'm sorry if I'm pressing this up, or maybe you can't answer now. What sort of life experiences perhaps led to that? You thinking this way?
In some of the courses, like environmental philosophy, economics, and environmental economics, we were studying that not whatever we are doing, even electrical cars are not helping the environment at the end, but we were thinking that this is going to help, like you are shifting to electrical cars or whatever, so it's going to help the environment, but at the end it's not helping. So what else do we do? So I think that was a shift and change where things started changing.
No one else? Yeah, there. Can you pass the mic? Vivek is there. Vivek will take after that.
So just like Aditi, I had pets from a young age, so I really liked animals. I liked being there. And another thing, I really like nature. After like coming to Krea, I got proper exposure to wildlife, with what we have here, like snakes, scientists. But finding a snake, I'm really excited with that. And and also I'm pretty good at handling stray animals. So we got a campus dog here. I once helped another wild parrot to take water and just check upon. So basically like that. So I really like animals, and even if my friends say I should have been doing environmental as a major, even though I'm psychology. But yeah, so maybe a slight more exposure on how to go in that path, I would have definitely gone for environmental.
My whole life.
Yeah, well,
My whole life on the eighth grade, like
it's closer to him.
my whole life on the eighth grade, I lived like in a very city context. So then like the closest you got to nature was the beaches, and even those were very like commercialized, touristy, and like so in eighth grade when I moved to like India for like my parents moved me in this boarding school to actually that was my first like proper exposure to nature, because even to get to the boarding school, like the roads were specifically changed to like towns and cities, full ponds, land, and the roads wouldn't be proper. But then you go to campus and it was more nature than it was building houses. Even when we were studying biology, like a lot of the times the bio teachers would just take us around like outside campuses in like forest areas, like help us identify different butterfly weeds, animals. It shows like different, like for example, one time I don't remember which season it was, but then we all had to like lock ourselves in our dogs because there was this happy wild soil corresponding to the campus. And if you were lucky enough and you woke up early enough, there would be peacocks, and we had this mountain nearby, and we called it the sleeping giant, and we go on like there. So it was a huge like exposure to nature, and like you really form connections with it. There were even like classroom meetings that were outside. And that sort of environment like as like create emotional connection, and to the point that like when we went for like mountain treks, there was a like granite forming nearby, and you could see like all of us being like thinking twice about like whether it is like it's trying to sort of like to damage everything on top of the hills and all that. So like it was really I mean, I thought in those 2 years that I went to school, it was like a very direct exposure to nature. Compared to what I not had before, I thought it was just
Very vividly explained. No, come on, just shift the gear a bit. Some of you, I mean, again, it's not a judgy question. Some of you who are very sure you won't have anything to do with environmental ecology or something. Can you perhaps share why not? I'm not asking you why not. Like, why not? It would be interesting just to kind of juxtapose, contrast.
Yeah, Krea,
Yeah.
can you pass the mic?
So, to me, it's not that I would have to work in this, but I know I'm not a person who can work practically, and I kind of have to. I can only work in my head, sort of. So, for me, one of the things. This is why I know that I wouldn't do the kind of impact I would like to in a field that requires me to actually work. And another thing is, I think it's very dependent on the language that you understand in a sense. Like everyone else mentioned that they've been exposed or they've seen things like this. But for me, academics is the language I understand. So I don't like it's probably just the way I focused on it. Like it's what gives me the most happiness. Like I'm very good. So for me, if I go to like nature, like places in nature and I'm there, I never like end up thinking of like, oh, this is being damaged or what can happen to it. And rather it just makes me think more of philosophy or like this meditation. That's where my mind goes, which is why the connection that I make with like the need for environmental impact is not when I look at nature, but when I read of it. So that's why I think I wouldn't do well in the field, just why I wouldn't want to.
That's such an interesting insight. I love that a teddy bear is attacking the top. Hey, maybe one more. Somebody who definitely will not have nothing to do with this.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Any hands up? But all the hands we should have taken a picture. Come on. Can you first share?
Wait, is this on? The reason, okay, so I love the environment. I didn't raise my hand for either one because I don't want to do environment major because I mean I'm of the belief that your undergraduate degree doesn't matter. You can care about the environment, advocate for it, do actionable things with it without requiring a degree. So the reason I got into like biology or the environment in general is when I was like 4-year-old, like as a 4-year-old, I just grew asleep. And I would just look at it for hours every single day and be like, oh wow, the germinating. Like it brought me genuine happiness at the time and still does to see a plant constantly striving to live. Like you can see concrete, which is like crap, and you'll find plants still wanting to live there. So that kind of inspired me to just want this kind of life. But as I grew older, I did get into working with like environment groups on activities in Chennai. We had set up a sort of a vegetable garden at Plutos as part of BSV's Eco Club. And I had asked them, well, why didn't you do this earlier? They were like, why don't you have a larger garden? Because I had a lot of land, but they only demarcated like a small part of it for vegetables, and they were like, well, money. Then probably 10 years after that, I think maybe 5 years ago, I was part of a river saving group called Krea. And they had taken us all, when I say us, there's just a bunch of people who were just interested in saving the river, learning more about it. They took us out on a field trip where we went to Chennai Park.
I'm going to 4 days later.
Okay. So probably basically tracing Adia River's route through Chennai, or at least its past route in Chennai. Saw the poem, saw the Adia Konga and the things that they're doing. And we used to attend meetings every week. And time again, the same problem was the thing. Apart from like, you had lawyers who would fight tooth and nail to win cases and things like that. But it was always about money. Either it being the government being like, yeah, but why should we allocate a budget for this? Even if you get through your legality and stuff, it's always a thing about money. So that sort of, I guess, demotivated me. So it's like, I would love to do this, but I also like need to survive somehow. And I would love to be able to make as much money as I need to live comfortably, or like have the bare minimum, and then devote the remaining money that I have towards accelerating what the living. So I guess
I resonate that completely. It took me a decade to be stubborn and say, this is all I'm going to do. And I'm going to sustain myself. I'm going to reimagine. I'm going to do what it takes. And to come to a place where I make enough money now, I'm like, more than enough perhaps. And I mean, one of the things I'm very happy about having reached a certain point of my life is that I'm able to give employment to 16, 20 other people. Yeah, so so thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing that. That would be an entire study on itself. Put all the students on this side and that side and say, what are the different reasons? So diverse. Point here is that among all that was shared and also all that is here, awareness doesn't feature. Knowing does not feature too much. The more stronger factors are other things. Yeah, experiences with animals, childhood experiences, actual, community around this sort of a thing. Yeah. So one of the things I'm trying to create is a pedagogy of action. How do you create an action pedagogy? You're learning, but that the end result of that learning is you're standing up for things. You don't need a major. I did my BSc in physics, that to distance education. I'm a school walkout, by the way. Don't emulate me at all. But this seems to be the different factors out of my own experience from our work and a bunch of others who've done this. It needs to involve direct experience action. If it does not have local relevance, it's local relevance is really your zone of action, your zone of thing, and interconnectedness. And if this is a Ming Kuo paper. Okay, I won't talk about this right now. If you're interested, I could show you one activity, among the many we do with different children, how it kind of runs. Begins with local environment, always ends in civic engagement. The gradient of activity. You could show one of them. And then I'll stop and maybe if there are questions. And in June, a team of us are beginning a bunch of 5 government schools looking at how this sort of a pedagogy, the impact it has on children's attendance, academic performance, mental health, environmental sensitivity, and one more. Okay, 5 parameters. Okay. And we're studying this, and we've spoken to the Chief Secretary of Education. She said, okay, you're saying that big table I showed, which I did not talk about, that's a paper by Ming Kuo, who took all the papers in the world, none of them Indian. India has produced literature, but not studies on this, that this sort of a nature-based, local landscape-based, or place-based stuff is not just increasing your connection with place, but it's improving your well-being, your learning. Yeah, we don't have in India that sort of work yet, and hopefully, maybe next time you invite me, if at all, I would have done something in that field, and I would be able to share it with you. But that work is happening in June, and if that sort of gives something, the education department is willing to scale it up for the state. So I just want to show you one example of how an activity goes, how it puts these three things together, and always moves towards civic engagement, acting in always within the larger context. Or we can just click on it and then look at Samajit's private email. We'll do. Why is it getting harder? We'll just click on it. Okay. So this is not an information thing. So let's go down. Okay. Very simple. Different materials and their heat capacity. Yeah. You have 10 different materials around your place. Take the material. All of you, we went through COVID, so you have these little temperature guns, So in the noon time, use your temperature gun on 10 different materials. And so it could be tarmac, concrete, brick, shoes, plastic, whatever else. Nothing gross or dangerous, but commonplace materials. Yeah. And look at the average. So you understand, where it's hotter, how temperature is moderated. Very simple. Going down. Investigating urban heat island effect. We'll go to the illustration. I think that better. Come down. No. So we are basically using the same method, looking at a place where there are trees and there are no trees, measuring temperature, and also understanding the socio-political implications of that. This street below might have an ironwala, a flower selling lady, a cobbler, because they can sit in the shade, or an auto stand. Versus here, they just get fried, so they wouldn't. Yeah. So understanding heat within its socio-political context also, it links back to interconnectedness in the action paragraph. My colleague Bianca does this beautiful illustration. She does illustrations. I love the egg on the board. Next one. People's experiences of heat. So conversations are an important form of direct action. Yeah. And I think in Zahra's narrative, some of that came from speaking with teachers and stuff. And here you are looking at different kinds of speaking to people from different socio-economic classes during summer, understanding what their experience of heat is. Let's go down a bit. A sample questionnaire here, but you can evolve your own. Yeah. So you can see it slowly, an action pedagogy moving into civic engagement. Let's go down. I'm just very broadly going through. Okay, so you can go into paduirtrust.org and see the rest of our modules of a whole bunch of things you can talk about. Yeah, let's go down. Chennai drought. Very interesting part of the Chennai drought is that I work with vulnerable communities a lot. I go in there and ask them, okay, 2019, May 1st was called day 0. What did you experience? Dozens of responses. We couldn't get water, we had to move, we had to stand in line, this, that. I'm like, stop. I have a session, sort of like so. I go into a school or I walk into a college level and say, okay, 2019, May 1st, day 0, what did you experience? Like, there was a drought. Okay, what happened? That's interesting. Yeah. Privilege matters. Let's go down. Let's go down. This is not an activity, it's like a case study. Investigating heat and health. Here you are interviewing doctors and veterinarians, looking at heat and health with respect to animals and humans. And the last one. There was end there. Summer observation log. Here, what you do is you look at different species. Research some basic stuff, and in summer, how do you see them? So there's like a 10-day, 15-day journal you keep, looking at how they are coping with summer. And we've given some samples of that. There's one. Yeah. that's an example of all through there is some form of direct engagement action. There is, I feel, enough academic thinking also perhaps, and interconnectedness. So heat is not just physics and mercury and I don't know what graphs. It's also people and it's feelings and it's health and bunch of other things. Thank you for listening to me. I'm at the end of. I hope that.
Questions, comments? Good. No questions?
What role do you see for how significant or important it will be marginalized communities who are at the forefront of it and who haven't contributed to it but who face the
Adaptation and mitigation. I've that word so many times. I've forgotten what they mean. But so a lot of our curriculum making has come from engagement with vulnerable communities. So if you look at even developmentally, somebody who's socioeconomically or health-wise stressed, the way they grow is entirely different from somebody who's privileged enough. A very simple thing like if you I met somebody who was a Montessori child here in the room, but if you look at Montessori's developmental plans, the interpersonal intelligence develops much later in early adolescence versus in an underprivileged scenario, interpersonal intelligence starts very early, even the primary landscape, because they have to put milk, they have to go shop, and stuff like that. So as such, it's informed from there. And in terms of if you look at adaptation mitigation, the civic engagement aspect of that becomes very important because one needs to, you can't go and tell anybody for that matter, or especially for a person from a vulnerable community, you know what, switch off your fan, you know what, carry a cloth bag, you know, wow, you've saved the planet. You need the tools to engage structurally, and you need the time and opportunity to practice that as a cultural thing. So I think there pedagogically it becomes very important, how the tools and the experience to practice cultural change, structural change, moving away from the individualistic, portrayals of climate, which is highly problematic. I feel that. There's this famous story of the carbon footprint, created by British Petroleum. I'm sure you know about that, right? So I think that's the most powerful thing. Training in structural engagement goes tremendously towards education.
Questions?
By the way, this talk sort of is not action pedagogy. It's passive pedagogy. It's like one person talking.
Yeah, so I'll ask. So even I think this is more of a reflection than a question, I would say. See, you are saying that we need to have localized connection, and that actually does induce intrinsic motivation, which is I totally agree. But we live in this age of consumerism, consumer culture, which focuses on globalization, right? Which constantly pushes people away from their local environment. And it is as true as for both of us or all of us as it is for more economically, socio-economically marginalized countries. So like basically I see the challenges that are fighting the structural political economic forces, which is constantly giving people move out of their own local settings and providing them this hope of a better life or more independent life and so on and so forth. And there are also stories that local communities where you are living in close proximity tends to be quite hierarchical. There are different types of power dynamics and justice issues which are there, especially the younger generation who cannot express their thoughts and opinion because the elders always will have the upper hand, right? Like, how do you face such dilemmas? Because again, I'm not asking you how to solve it, because I also don't know if there's any solution to that, honestly. But I'm asking, considering you're working with a lot of these communities, do you face these dilemmas, whether people from these communities expresses such concerns, and how you kind of handle it in your action research, whatever that you're discussing?
Yeah. One of the big challenges I face is when I want to do this in a city like Chennai, I need some sort of access to it around. There was a time when a school in Tinagar called me, and in the school there's not a single blade of grass coming out. And they said, do a nature walk. I said, you know what nature is for? What do I do here? And I did something like this when I went. I didn't feel good about it, but yeah, the absence of nature, not nature, absence of a multi-species sort of community driven by what you're talking about makes my work very, very challenging. There are places of work I choose which includes this, and other places I'll avoid because of that. That's one thing. Second thing is there's a lot of many fractals of justice issues I face. For instance, in the Kaliveli area, I can't get one guy who's going to be affected to come and implead in my case because there are inequalities within them. So I've grown, initially, if you have heard me sort of, 4 years ago, I'd be like indigenous knowledge, this, that. Now I'm like, you can't homogenize that because there are some places where last year, December, I was in the Dibang Valley region trying to understand the dam building in the Dibang River. I lived with Jibi Pulu, one of the Mishmi elders there. One of the most beautiful things about the Mishmi cosmology, Mishmi is a tribe, is that there's no such thing as non-living in their world. Everything is alive. Stone, rock, your toy, your house, everything is alive. And when they speak from there, it shifts you, kind of rewires and snaps your neurons. But the thing is, a lot of the lobby there is the local people. I work in Melaputur village, which is close to our farm there. Female infanticide still there, I work in the village school where the lower caste children are made to sweep the place before, and I'm not sure I'm kind of properly handling these things, but I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And there are places where I hint. I was in a place called Pichanur earlier this year, and I've written an essay on this. You can search for it. Can biodiversity be a political science teacher? And what happened was the children I was working with in Pichanur Government School, it's in Coimbatore, one was from the counter caste. Hey, I can speak about caste here. Right?
Yeah.
Some places. Okay. And in another group was the Irula tribe from outside the village. And so I try, the teacher.
The caste is
upper caste. You try to make groups and stuff. So I was trying to make groups, and children just stood like that. Both of you be in the same group. I didn't understand what's happening, and the teacher told me different caste. So, okay, I didn't know that. And we did 2 days of butterflies. Yeah. Journaling, games, 2 long walks, etc. And then one of the more progressive teachers, which we kind of sided with, she called me and said, look at that, they're completely mixed up. And there was something about, I'm not trying to sell my idea, but, and I'm not talking about a solution either. There was something about this sort of a philosophy which went past these distinctions, which naturally Of course, after that, during lunchtime, they sat apart again. But during the walk, when they had to fill in their observation tables of butterflies, the tasks had mixed. And this teacher was extremely moved by it. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. No, I'm just thinking, do you see students, I mean, more such community people coming and telling that we would like to do what you're saying, but we cannot do because XYZ.
Yeah.
Do you hear such narratives and how you handle those narratives? Because oftentimes we pit environment and development against each other, right? We are like, okay, either you want to have environment or you want to have a better standard of living. So if this is the spectrum we are looking at, poor communities might also like to go towards the development side because that gives them more.
Leave my beach alone, leave my lake alone. I would say most of them even, in some places definitely not, but in some places very clearly that's there. And then one of the things here is that it's justice centered as such. There's equality. We draw a lot from Richard Wilkinson's work on how equality creates well-being and so on. Yeah, it's still a dilemma. I'm in the same place here. Yeah.
The question. And completely share this.
Similar to Professor class has started debate, talking about like individual approach versus like more government approach. And in some sense, the conclusion of the debate was individual approach and efforts matter. Only governments can actually enact proper like long-term change.
So that is an interesting binary, I think, the individual and the law, the government, the structural, whatever that is. That binary has its little underpasses. There are a lot of government policies which can come into being by individuals coming together and doing something. Those are the limitations of that binary. There are some places where I don't use individualism. For instance, it's a very trivial example. When I'm working with the youth who's from a certain background, and I'm saying, you know what, you're not responsible. You're in such a places, you're in such a background. That's why you're suffering. So otherwise, you would talk to him like, no man, you can do it. Let's find out how to get out of this. Versus in other places, I would use structural issues. For instance, when I'm talking with teachers, there was a child in a school I work in who brought in tobacco. I was chewing and distributing to children. He comes from a very, very difficult landscape of Kallukuttai in Perungudi, where all kinds of things happen. And it's also the largest domestic labor community, with its own problems. And can we look at that structurally? Can we not blame the child? Can we look at that from all those angles? So, those two lenses are useful in different contexts, and in some contexts, it's nice to drop them. When it comes to climate, when it comes to, let's say I'm saying something to you guys, I would always say act structurally. Behaving in a certain way in your, small circle within your house, eating only soya or, cooking with, I don't know, doesn't mean a damn thing. You have the power and the wherewithal to create structure. When I say structure, it could mean your campus. It could mean that sort of a thing. Louis Chandler said this beautifully, which I'm sure to misquote. She said, and this is based on her research that, oh damn it, okay, is something about how political engagement creates the best sort of outcomes versus we have a limited amount of effort. Either I can go and make sure I switch off every fan in my room, which is important. I'm like, I can do it for my own moral well-being, but okay, I'm going to switch off my fan. I'm not saying don't switch off the fan. I'm just, that limited effort, I'd rather put in fighting a case rather than, traveling 4 kilometers and buying organic apples or something like that. I will go ahead, use the plastic bag, but I will fight a structural issue. My efforts are better going in there. Yes.
So, sort of coming to pursuing environmental action as like an actual avenue that you want to focus on. Do you feel that this sort of pressure, intergenerational pressure to secure a lot of wealth, and do well for yourself, and the fact that sort of going into environmental action isn't, the aim of that isn't to secure wealth, it's for some sort of data cause. It's inherently not self-centered. You think the aspiration of, okay, I want to make sure I'm doing well, sort of goes against this philosophy of I want to, do good for the environment. And do you feel that's an issue? And like, how do you sort of?
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's a huge issue, and I see that as a gender this thing also. I run this internship. In the team of 16 of us, 14 of them are women, and interested in pursuing this. 2 of us are men. I see a very clear divide. Wait, I'll come back to the income part of it. There's a certain shift in values, and it kind of connects to her question on individualism. I don't think biologically, but I think socio-culturally, boys, men are conditioned to be individualistic, gather profit, and kind of have that sort of competitive, careeristic point of view to life. I had to fight very hard to kind of break that for myself. I had literally run away from home. I did that when I was 16. But that's an interesting gender difference I see. I did stuff. So I was doing this for Loyola College. Boys would join us. They would come. They wouldn't do anything. They would come to receive the certificate. And I'm like, that's not the point of the internship, man. But then the girls would really put in a lot of sweat, blood, and tears into the work. And it's got to do with this wealth making very clearly. I think that's a big thing. For instance, in the youth climate internship, 2 of them are joining us. We are able to provide the salary for 2 people. But if the others perceive that we had larger funding, others would join us. It took me a very long time, and it was about creating my own avenue. And I grew up reading Krishnamurti, like many others, and growing up in a certain philosophical foundation, which helped me be stubborn enough to say, I don't care if I starve, I'm going to do this work. And so those sort of experiences help you generate the values which then help fend off, fight, and survive, even in a largely individualistic society, pushing you towards buy land, man, and build your. Yeah, I'm struggling to answer your question. I just want to say it's a big issue, and you're not going to make a bunch of money. I make enough money, but I'm not going to die a billionaire. Definitely, I don't want to also. But I love some Robin Wall Kimmerer. Anybody has read Robin Wall Kimmerer? There's a beautiful essay called Service Berry Tree. She's written Emergent Fantasy. And they go to one of the anthropologist goes to one of the tribes in Amazon. And again, I'm not romanticizing, I'm just quoting because it's a story of the indigenous worldview. And of course, you see this in other kinds of worldviews as well. So these people, what they would do is somebody would catch meat, and then they would. Okay, somebody, I'll end very quickly. Sorry. Okay, somebody would catch meat and make sure they distribute it to everybody. Yeah. So she talks about it as reciprocity. And the anthropologist asked the person who got the meat, why don't you store it for yourself? He says, I store my meat in my brother's belly. I store my meat in my brother's belly. That's a form of wealth. I think we're also conditioned to think of wealth in a certain way. Something which is, so if you look at, for me, standing and talking, if you looked at my CV, I have absolutely no academic qualification. Yeah, I've come here purely because of social wealth, through friendships, through other sorts of things. Those are kinds of wealth we don't talk about. And I think we should. At this point, I'm rambling. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, My question doesn't necessarily relate to nature, but now that you're talking about the environment as a social, political, cultural movement, you've been visiting these villages, these remote areas with people. Do you believe that there is a change, there is something that is moved in these locations? Because there is one, we talk about culture and their own value, but on the other end is cultures change, they develop, they adapt. So are you seeing that in these locations?
There is this place where we worked, and I'm not the first person who worked there. That entire place has become, that entire village has a culture of resistance and activism. One of my big teachers about the ocean, Palayamanna, I created a bunch of stuff with him, the fish guide, which some of you saw. I've seen significant change, whether it be a culture of a specific school, whether it be a culture of a specific village. There are places where when you're able to do serious work and connect and learn mutually, there is significant change which you come back feeling really fulfilled about. And then other places where a complete failure, you gave it all and nothing happened. You meet both, but I think the former happens quite often for it to drive your work.
No, but he's asking, I think, the ground level.
Ground level, yeah. I'm talking about that. Yeah.
Okay, I think, yeah, it's time for also. So let us end. Yeah, thank you, Yuvan, for this exciting talk. I'm sure like all of you enjoyed. It's been an interaction with him. He's a busy man, as you have seen. Like
I like to take people on walks.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to really pursue him. Me and Rahul have to really pursue him to agree to give a talk. He was not really keen to give a talk because he doesn't believe in talks, as you have seen from this, from this presentation. So yeah, and I'm sure like Environment Club, Shreya, I know she's the coordinator. She's in touch with Yuvan. So if anyone wants to reach out to him, or you can reach out to me or Shreya, and we can communicate. There are some scopes of internship as well. But yeah, all those modalities we have to look at before we say anything more. But yeah, then we are kind of in discussion with that as well. Okay, thank you for coming and thanks for